Thank you so much, Shivi. This is absolute pleasure to be moderating this panel. So, without taking much time, let me introduce the panelists to the forum. Of course, you all can check them in LinkedIn. Their profile is very prolific, but I'm keeping the introduction very short. We have Abhishek Bansal, Chief Sustainability Officer of Arvind Limited. He's earlier worked with Gold Standard Foundation, alumnus of National Institute of Industrial Engineering. So he will be talking more from the sustainability from the corporate point of view. Along with him, of course, we have Dr. Sunita Purushottam, Head of Sustainability of Mahindra Lifespace Developers. She has earlier been with Trini Sustainability Solution and Infosys. She's an alumnus of Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. We have Atif Saeed, Country Head, Green Building Program, International Finance Corporation, World Bank Group. He's alumnus of Arizona State University. He'll be talking more from the green building point, how it is evolving in our country and in South Asia. We have Ashwin Kak, of course, is the Associate Director of Sustainability and Agriculture at ABN Bain. He's earlier been with Pidilite Industries Limited, alumnus of Goa Institute of Management. And of course, we have a great startup founder, Som Narayan, partner and co-founder of Carbon Masters, University of Edinburgh, where he did his master's, and there he converted his idea to a startup. He's been in the field of climate change and sustainability for last 12 years, or rather more. Okay, welcome to the panel, all of you. So nice to have you. So let me start. Let me begin the panel discussion with a broader theme to telling all the audience why are we heading towards sustainability. Though the question might sound very obvious, but still, let me put it explicitly. Why are we heading towards sustainability? What are the key challenges that corporates are facing right now in enabling sustainability in their particular organization, in their processes? Okay. So would we have a audience poll? Okay. Okay. So let me start. Let me start. Request everyone to say what is their sustainability mantra to each of you. Let me start with Abhishek. Abhishek, would you like to give a one-line thought about your sustainability mantra?
Yeah, my sustainability mantra and what we have at Arvind, our organization, is also being fundamentally right. So, and we relate to sustainability in a way where we saw every business that we undertake, every resource that we consume, we want to be fundamentally right in consuming, in producing, and in selling our products to the customers.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Let me now pass this question to Dr. Sunita. Dr. Sunita, can you share your sustainability mantra to all the audience here?
So this is more of a personal mantra, and I have I'm calling it TACT. TACT is talk about sustainability. There's a lot to be spoken about, awareness creation. Then actionize, that's A. C, collaborate, and think ahead. So that's the personal vision. And from a corporate perspective, it's building beyond tomorrow, but embedding value-driven growth. And that's, we are moving towards integrated thinking and reporting. And that's what is driving us, which is governed by our sustainability pillars of our policy, which is sites, offices, projects, and communities. So that's the mantra.
Wonderful, very powerful. Tact. Thank you so much. Let me pass this question to Atif Mohammad Saeed as well. Sir, can you share your sustainability mantra?
Sure, Ganesh. So I believe that sustainability should not be left as a preserve for a few. It should be available to the masses. And in order to do that, we have to simplify. I think that's the key mantra: simplify as much as possible to its very basic elements so that everybody can understand it and adopt it.
Wonderful, sir. I read you're also from being in Toastmasters, and I like the way you put it in such a wonderful manner. Thank you so much. Ashwin, over to you. What is your sustainability mantra?
Thanks, Ganesh. I think the most important part when it comes to sustainability is that we recognize that we cannot work in seclusion, being humble, recognizing one's gap, and then going out and identifying partners in the external world, including startups that we can work with to solve our problems. And I think along with this combination of being humble, we also need to stop being defensive in trying to again and again explain now as to why we need to do sustainability. I somehow feel we now need to move from the why to the exact hows. So that's my mantra.
Now that you use the word startup, let's go to Som, who's actually been in the startup world for quite some time and solving problems on the ground as a startup. So, can you share your sustainability mantra?
Yeah, sure, Ganesh. So that's to help accelerate the world's transition into a low carbon economy, and that we're doing by building Carbon Lights into a leading bio-CNG and organic fertilizer brand. Happy to talk more about it in detail.
Thank you so much. So definitely we'll come to that. Let me start with the questions to the head of sustainabilities. We have Mahindra and Arvind Limited here. Would like to hear, starting with Dr. Sunita, uh, what are the sustainability goals of your organization? Can you tell it to our audience? What are the drivers to enable this transition, and why do you think it is now is the right time? Would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so the goals of the organization from a sustainability perspective, from a carbon perspective, it's carbon neutrality. From waste management perspective, it's zero waste to landfill. And then there are timelines which are, outlined in our roadmap. So for carbon neutrality is 2040. However, we are aligned to science-based targets. And it is important for organizations to understand that to be driven by science behind achieving these targets. Otherwise, there are, so it brings a lot of credibility to the targets and the goal setting that you have done. So science-based approach for arriving at goals is very, very important with whichever area you take up for, especially for the carbon, align it to the sectoral budget and the global budget and the requirements around it. The question around the time and why we have to do it now. In fact, we are losing time and we should do it as soon as possible. Decarbonization is a journey that every organization must embrace upon as soon as possible. And carbon as such is a mother of all indicators. So if there's an excess with water, there's waste, there's materials, and a variety of aspects around the environmental piece. And it also embraces many of the social indicators also. So if we look at it holistically, we need to move to building, it is the base for building a better tomorrow. If we don't start now, it's too late already. So there is a planetary boundary layer aspect where Earth has it's a physical system, physical, chemical, biological system, and these boundaries have been exceeded. And it's important to understand that what will happen if the Earth reaches those tipping points, and some of these tipping points are already getting exceeded. So that's why it's very important to act now.
Thanks, Dr. Sunita. I would like to hear your thoughts as well, Abhishek, on this part. I mean, what are your sustainability goals of your organization today, and what are the drivers to enable this transition, and why do you think it is the right time now?
Sure. So, Ganesh, from our organization perspective, textile is an environmentally intensive industry. So, textile uses a lot of natural resources, and we have defined our targets in the similar manner. So, we have 4 key goals on cotton, which is our biggest raw material, water, which is again, as you know, is associated with the textile production, energy, and chemicals. So these 4 inputs that we use for making our products, and our goals are towards making each of these sustainable. And we've been working on it for quite a while. For water, we had established a goal back in 2014 where we said that we'll stop consuming any fresh water for textile resources. And thereon, we have moved one by one all our production either to a closed loop, so zero liquid discharge plants. And second approach we've used is we have tied up with local municipalities, and we are taking wastewater that is being generated as sewage from the city of Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar, and cleaning it up and using it for textile production. And this year, I'm happy to inform, earlier this year, we have achieved our target of zero freshwater consumption. And the water that we were earlier using is made available for community, for agriculture, for other usages. Second is around energy. For energy, the goal is dual pronged, and as Dr. Sunita also highlighted, the goal is to move towards renewable energy and reduce carbon emissions alongside. So we have a goal of 40% reduction in carbon emissions by 2025 from a 2015 baseline. And we are there about 17-18% reduction we have done so far. We put up one of India's largest solar rooftop plant at a single site. So we have 18 megawatt at a single factory operational in Ahmedabad. Third one is around cotton. Cotton is the key input for all the textile fabrics that we make. And we've been working in cotton sector since 2007 when we first started working with farmers on organic cotton production. And since then, we've grown our programs. Right now, we're working with more than 90,000 farmers in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Madhya Pradesh on growing sustainable cotton, on transitioning from conventional farming practices to more sustainable farming practices. And we're today able to farm or produce more cotton with these farmers than we actually consume in our process. So making it available for larger industry to be able to use that. Last is about chemicals. So again, textile industry is one of the largest consumers of chemicals, and every look and feel that you see on the clothes that we wear is contributed by different chemicals. So the idea here is to make chemicals as less harmful as possible or more sustainable as possible, use chemicals efficiently. So we're working with a base of more than 30 chemical manufacturers in India and outside India to make, to understand these chemical products, to define rules for around these chemical products. And we are also collaborating with a global initiative, ZDHC, Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, which is a global initiative of the textile industry to eliminate the hazardous chemicals from the textile supply chain. So these are the 4 areas. And again, coming to startups, we are working with a tremendous amount of startups from India and across the globe. And textile is the area which is seeing a lot of innovation in last 5 years. And we see technology enabling more and more sustainability going forward. So be it in terms of IT technology, but also the core textile technology. It is being changed in a way which traditional textile technology providers have not been able to do. So there are researchers who have no textile background, but they are producing textile applications which are changing the way we used to manufacture textile. And just to give an example, we recently, as on early this year, we started with a waterless method of dyeing the denim. So if you see denim, it is associated with heavy water usage, chemical usage using the dyeing during the dyeing process. And for last 4 years, we worked with US-based startups who are working on waterless technology for the dyeing. And early this year, we were able to bring this commercially to India. There's only 2 such installations in the world right now, one in Spain and the second one is here in India. And we hope that entire industry would move to similar technologies going forward. Thanks.
Wow, that's wonderful. Great to hear. I mean, an industry like textile going that going. I mean, it's a kind of a stewardship in its own way for us to follow. Thank you so much, Abhishek, on that. Uh, Sir, Atif, sir, I would like to first hear. I mean, most of us may not completely understand in this forum what green buildings are. So, if you can give a quick introduction about what green building is and what Green Building Council is doing today. How has this initiative taken off in different parts of the world? How is it taken off in India, most importantly?
So yeah, green buildings is kind of a very difficult, or in very a term that has been defined very differently by different people. It's almost like asking somebody, "Are you healthy?" People can define their health in different ways, uh, and there are different perceptions of it. And that's why it's difficult to actually say this is a green building and this is not a green building. And that's the reason why these certifications have come up. And again, the certifications have certain differences in defining that. The way we define it is more related to the use of resources in buildings. So how can we optimize the use of resources? And by resources, I mean primarily energy, water, and construction materials. So how can we optimize the use of these resources in a building to meet our needs without really harming the indoor environment of the building and the external environment, basically meaning pollution and greenhouse gases, without really emitting all of those. So that's the kind of balance these buildings have to maintain uh, while still providing all the comfort needs of the occupants. Uh, Unfortunately, in a lot of emerging markets in developing countries, people have the perception that this is a first world concept. This is not really for us. We've already been living very sustainably over the years, which is true. If you go back maybe 50 years or 100 years, we were living very sustainably. But if you look at our cities right now, unfortunately, that's changing extremely fast, and we might overtake some of the most polluting, the most energy guzzling countries around the world with the rapid pace of urbanization that we have. So right now, India, I think, is 34% urbanized, and it's going to be around 50% in the next 20 years or so. So meaning we'll have half the population of the country living in our cities, and when these people move to the cities, typically their incomes also go up. So they need more amenities. They need air conditioning. We all need hot water or appliances, microwave, television, phones. So where does all the resource come in for running these appliances and providing those comforts? So it's a double whammy kind of thing, because we are increasing the population in the cities, all and also increasing the requirements or the demands of these people who move to the cities. So we have to really act fast and make and ensure that what we are building now really is efficient, not just now, but will remain efficient over the next 20, 30, 40 years for the life of that building. And we need to do it at scale. Doing Somebody used to use this term mosquito bites. So you cannot really kill an elephant with a mosquito bite. So these small efforts that sometimes we do are just mosquito bites. We have to make huge steps and make it at scale. So fortunately for us at the World Bank Group, we have some leverage on that, because we can bring in some finance, we can bring in some leverage with the governments, and some leverage also with the private sector. So we're trying to do that. Firstly, as I said in the mantra, we're trying to simplify the whole thing, make sure that we are talking about something that everybody understands. It's not complex at all. And to do that, we need to have data. We need to have local data, contextual data. A lot of the data that's been around for green buildings has been from countries which are not similar to ours. So collecting local data and making it available, almost democratizing that data, so that people can make their own decisions correctly. So we've actually developed this software, online software called Edge. It's available for free for anyone to use at edgebuildings.com, where you could log in and develop a model for your own building, regardless of whether it's in Amravati or Vijayawada or Srinagar or Kohima, wherever it is in India, about 65, 70 locations. depending on your building, you can develop the estimate of energy use, water use, and materials use in the building, and then look at opportunities to improve it, and also the cost involved. How much would it cost to make this jump, make this leap to a higher efficiency standard? Uh, and we believe that once you provide this kind of data to people, most
Mhm.
people make rational choices. But it has to be simple enough. It has to be easy enough for them to access it. And then to supplement that, we have been providing investments and finance of our own, and also working with local banks to support these efforts from developers, from home buyers, from corporations, to ensure that these buildings are built green. Eventually, our aim is to kind of move towards the IoT uh, platform as well, and have some real-time data being fed
Mhm.
into the software, which can then inform operational operational energy optimization as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wow. I like the mosquito bite thing. Definitely, I'll use it more often in many of this discussion. Thanks to you for that. So, coming to Ashwin, tell us about your sustainable initiatives at a global scale. I mean, you're a global organization. How has it spanned for last 10 years? I mean, how do you measure your scores, and how are you prioritizing it? I mean, this would be very helpful for many of the startups also listening today, because you have excellent startup engagement program as well through beer talks and various things. So please tell us about this.
So, Ganesh, for us, we have four main sustainability goals, and very similar to what everyone else also discussed, very specific to what our value chain looks like. So, agriculture is obviously our topmost goal here in India. We have water stewardship as a goal, circular packaging, and climate action. Now, if I look at all four of these, and if I give you the global and Indian context quickly, so in agriculture, we actually look at farmers across half a dozen crops in the world across 5 continents. Although barley is the main crop, which goes into the final brewing process of beer, but then we work with other sustenance crops also in continents like Africa and Latin America. Now, the aspect of working with these set of farmers is that they are all growing basic sustenance level crops. So the opportunity for us to do more for and with them is also very high for us. So what we do, for example, in India is that we don't just have a procurement program with the farmers, but we have a year-round engagement with our agronomists and field officers, where we are working on upskilling them, where we are working on providing them technology, and that's where a lot of these startup partnerships also start coming in. So we are working with Kisan Hub in digitizing all of our data when it comes to the farmers that we work with. We are working with an Argentinian startup called Zoom Agri, which is actually it's like a small printer, their device. It's helping us determine the purity of barley seeds, which is very important for us to ensure the final quality of beer which comes out is very good. So that's how we are sort of working in two ways, ensuring we get the right quality, but then also the farmer that we are working with moves one step ahead in his own farming practices. Water, again, very clearly, we our goal says 100% of the community around our areas of operation should have increased availability and quality of water. And in India too, we are working in 5 such states, focusing right now primarily in the phase 1 of water recharge, then moving on to the larger wash initiatives, or what we call the integrated watershed development, where we work along with the local community, the local NGOs, potentially certain state governments and their available schemes which are there. So helping the villagers also utilize that. And in fact, in water, we have this really nice case in one of our Latin American countries, where a brand has actually been born out of a sustainability initiative rather than the other way around. So those are the kind and extent of initiatives that in water are going on. And then in circular packaging, very clearly, although the goal talks about returnability, although the goal talks about recycling, in India we have a very unique case where the entire industry in itself is working with the returnable glass bottle industry, and that in itself ensures a lot of reuse. So right now our focus is how can we reduce the number of new injections that are going into the market? How can we start keep on using those old bottles again and again, following all of those quality practices? That's where again we've tied up with this new startup also called Startwig, and we are using their interface that is available for getting transparency and traceability in the supply chain when it comes to glass bottles also. So that's for circular packaging quickly. And in climate action, so climate action actually has two parts to our goal. So one talks about by 2025, how do we reduce the carbon emission in our entire supply chain by 25%? But then the second part also talks about how by 2025, all our breweries will have 100% of the electricity coming through renewable means. And in fact, we are already at a stage where in a few countries in Africa, Latin America, almost the entire North America, and also parts of Europe now, where we have already achieved that. In Asia and India specifically, we are facing a few challenges when it obviously comes to the policy and regulatory landscape as of now, but we are very positive, like moving ahead for the how we see the landscape developing over the next 2 years, 3 years. There is a lot of changes in technology also coming in which will help that. So one of it is again something through a startup where we are looking at battery storage in our facilities as to how we can increase the consumption that we can generate on site itself through our solar panel. So uh, when I heard of this discussion that we were having, the first thing that struck me was everywhere in all of our sustainability goals, we are very clearly working. It hasn't been intentional, honestly. We've just gone out to look for partners, but everywhere we found a startup which has that solution which can help us. So yeah, that's how we've been working.
Amazing, Ashwin. Thank you for sharing that. And I think now that you said you have found various startups fixing the gaps in your sustainability goals, now we have a startup founder, Somnarayan. Som, you have been an inspiration to me. I've known you for like from that Shell event, and ever since that, I've already always been admired you, and I've seen how you have actually got the circular economy through your startup. Please tell us about your story. This could inspire a lot of other potential entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. Tell us about your story. How did it all start? Of course, we have time limitations, so I know it is a longer story, but
It'll take a lot of time. I don't want to hijack you. But
give a
Ganesh,
glimpse
thank you
of
so
it.
much. Yeah, thanks, Ganesh. It's it's rare that somebody will actually come and ask you all your pain points. I'm not going to make it like a story where people come. I want people to come back and actually get in touch with us and even understand and see how they can work with us, because we want to now give back to the startup ecosystem. But before that, I think I'll get back to Ashwin. There's a real opportunity again for to work on a project which we want to work with farmers, etc., and Abhishek as well, both Ashwin and Abhishek. But before that, let me quickly tell you how I started out. So 2007 2008 I came out. I was a fresh out of college. I did a post graduation in environmental law. Before that, I'm an environmental engineer. Then I was working for about a year in Bangalore with an NGO called Greenpeace. Post that, I figured out that climate change is the biggest threat during that course of action. Of course, with the environmental background. And then decided to say that, okay, let me go out and see what's on the other part of the world. Went to UK, did masters, and said, before I go back, let me learn why is it that so difficult. In back in India, it's still considered that we have all the right values, but why is it still India and China the biggest emitters? Started Carbon Masters with another classmate of mine, Kevin. Both of us were a spin out from University of Edinburgh. I spent about 2 or 3 years figuring out various things. As a startup, you start, the lowest investment is consulting. So we did that. We took off really well. The university was our first client. Then for the next 3-4 years, we did a lot of work, got certifications done to certify organizations on their carbon journey. Then I said, look, I'm done here. I want to go back to India and then replicate the same thing. And then for the next 1.5 years, 2012, I'm talking about. So it was really difficult here. People are not ready to pay. They're not ready to do any consulting work. The big fours were doing okay, especially in this area of climate change. And so then we said, if people are not going to pay us for consulting, so how do we still, but the mission still remains the same, that we want to reduce carbon emissions. And that's what Carbon Masters wants to help, helping organizations to accelerate their journey towards a low carbon economy. The circular bit came later, right? So then when we started working on the most obvious problem Bangalore was facing was the waste that's going to landfill. Every day, 4,000 tons just going into landfill. It's rather, I think, 6,000 now, of which 50% is biodegradable, and that shouldn't really end up in landfills. We then figured that, again, there is a simple solution. Biogas has been there for 100 odd years. Why can't we do it? Why can't we take all this material, put it into a biogas plant, and generate something that can be going back into reducing emissions? And then you figured that every ton of organic waste can give you 40 kgs of bio-CNG. 40 to 50 kgs, the quality is great. It can even give you 60, 70 kgs, right? But bare minimum, it can give you can extract methane, purified, bottle it, sell it as a replacement for LPG or any fossil fuel that you want. We then started running trucks on our same gas. That's when Mahindra came into picture. But I'll come on to that. The bit that I wanted to say was, at that point in time, we thought that, right, here's a low carbon solution that can change the world, beginning from India. I mean, and we saw that most of the plants all across the world are doing power generation. Whereas power, I mean, back then, it's already 2014, 2015, power was taking off in terms of solar. So doing power is not economically viable. And whereas if you do, energy prices had hit like all-time high. 2014, 2015, a kg of LPG was 115 rupees, 114 rupees per kg of LPG. Now it's around 70 rupees. Okay. So we said, right, here's the solution. We can do that. And we started doing that, and the energy prices fell. And of course, I'll come on to the capex part. We're still in the pilot plant, and the whole thing was, LPG's oil prices are going to be cheaper than water and all that news. So we then said, how can you still make it viable? You have a byproduct, which is organic fertilizer, and we started working on that. And the organic fertilizer was, to our surprise, that you don't need chemical fertilizers. And India has been using excessive amount of chemical fertilizers, and the soil health is completely deteriorated. So, a good soil should have at least about 5% organic matter. Here, we're talking about less than 1.5%. So there's another byproduct. It's from the same facility. So we combined both. We branded it as Carbon Lights. And but the biggest challenge was, how do you raise capex? That's when Mahindra came in, because we had ran Mahindra's trucks on the same fuel. And we started pitching to several investors. Each plant costs about $2 million. And Mahindra did a pilot with us. And then and that really took off. And we solved the capex problem. So we came up with an asset light model. Now, what we're doing currently, we are working with across 2 states, 4 plants, all commercially viable. We are now actually looking to put about 80 to 100 plants in the next 5 years. And while all this was happening, 2010, there was no concept of bottling of bio-CNG. And now in last couple of years ago, government recognized, they've started a program called Satat, where 5,000 plants are going to be built up. So, there are a lot more startups who can come into this place. It is capital intensive. So we have created an agri-entrepreneur program where we can have agri-entrepreneurs entering into the business, or entrepreneurs wanting to get a flavor of the business right at the very lowest capital investment of 2.5 lakhs per entrepreneur. And then they can manage in the rural area how to convert farmers. We help them, and they can actually, it can be both a mainstream income as a passive income. So we've tried to streamline the whole feedstock to the way how the industry should work. The solution is much more economically viable than existing fuel or chemical fertilizers. So that's been the journey. More than happy to take any specific questions.
Wonderful. So as I said, I know what it is to start as a consulting and take a business to this level. Partially, I have a story on that, but that's a different day. But thank you so much. I mean, now that you enlightened all the other panelists also on what a startup like yours can do, and you've also told the parallels on how many other startups can also serve these organizations. So I have a very general question to all. Before that, let me check if there is any audience question. Shri, do we have any audience question? Or let me actually ask this question, since this event is IoT Matrix, and we have some of the smartest minds in IoT also here, AI here. Would like to hear how would you be how would, I mean, let's keep this answer a little short in the interest of time. How have you been using IoT and data science, artificial intelligence in your organization to achieve your sustainability goals? Let me start with Ashwin. Ashwin, would like to hear your thoughts.
So I think a part of my answer previously sort of covered a lot of this, but I would say the biggest way in which we are driving IoT in general, and I would say AI or blockchain in specific, is that it's actually helping us cover up our traceability and transparency gaps that we are seeing in our larger value chain. So right from agriculture to water to packaging to renewable electricity also, there is a solution which exists for all of this, which we are implementing now, few in pilot stages, few in pretty much advanced stages. If I have to take one example, I'll quickly highlight the Zoom Agri example that I just took, which is literally a portable device, a very small device, which is building up an AI database, not just in India based on the barley varieties, but globally. So as we talk, the AI in that system improves minute on minute. And what we will have probably 1 or 2 years down the line is an application, and then you won't even require a printer. It will just be a software in which you can install it on your phone. You can just scan the barley variety and you can get the level of purity of barley varieties in that lot that you are scanning. So that is the extent of digitization which is possible and which we are now seeing happening. So yeah, I will leave it at that example and say, let's just ponder and think about what is possible.
Thanks, Ashwin. Dr. Sunita, I would like to hear your thoughts.
So, well, since we are a developer, there is a lot that is happening around IoT and buildings. I want to touch upon that. But before that, it is on ESG and AI. And how, from an investor perspective, these platforms are being used to understand what are the challenges across sectors. So it's not just our sector, real estate, but there are platforms that can help you extract and understand what are the trends, what are the different companies working on, what are they talking about, what are the issues, and so on. So all of this is being mined. So this data mining happens, and you come to know that, and you can derive intelligence from that. So sectoral issues that are plaguing, say, the real estate sector or mining sector or steel sector, a cement sector, you can understand, okay, what are the areas that other people are working on, they're talking about, they're, so this kind of ESG platforms based on AI and natural language processing exists, and we have used it to help us identify what are our material issues on which we should focus, and help us to attack all these issues from an environmental and a social perspective, so that we can, do targeted action and develop our roadmap. So that's one key intervention using a technology platform. It's a UK-based platform which helps us understand, which has helped us to understand this aspect with a little bit more clarity, rather than us doing the, trying and to Google search and trying to find, okay, what's trending and so on. So that's one aspect. The other is around the buildings, and we have 100% green portfolio, and this ambition to realize that how we can get better. It's primarily around how we can monitor the resources, water, energy aspects, and these are all IoT-based systems that can help us understand, measure, manage, monitor. So we are looking at that from a water perspective, similarly from a energy perspective, so that even during the occupancy phase, we are able to monitor the energy and the water performance, and that should be beneficial for our customers. So this is the area of work that we are deeply interested in, from a device, embedding the device from a, and these platforms can actually give you a year-on-year continual savings. So it could be a flat 17% of your energy bills, or a flat 18% of your water bills. So I'm just giving some numbers because these are actually, because you can actionize it, you can see it on your app. and the customers are able to engage with even the asset performance inside. So if my geyser is consuming a lot of energy, am I able to measure and monitor it? Am I able to tap it, put it off? So all of these then become actionizable for the end user. And these are some of these technology platforms that we are deeply interested in, which can enable customers to reduce their energy and resource consumption footprint deeply. So these are the two major areas of work.
Thanks, Dr. Sunita. This was very amazing for amazing opportunities for many startup listening here. Let me quickly ask Abhishek as well. In the interest of time, if you can share some example, quick example, or your interest on how you're using IoT and data science in your organization.
Yeah, so we are doing a bit of both. What Ashwin and Dr. Sunita said. So we are using it for traceability because there are different fibers which are more sustainable, and people and our customers want to be able to ensure that they are indeed being used in the products. So cotton traceability is being widely using the traceability tools, blockchain-based tools, and even recycled materials like recycled polyester is people are providing these tools now, which we are implementing. Second is in terms of connecting our production machines. So we are using a lot of these tools now to understand and the profile, the consumption profile of different machines, how it gets impacted, and how we can reduce various resource consumption from the machine. We are also using automatic inspection. So after the post-production of fabrics, we've implemented solutions for automated inspection and then learning from it to avoid any defects in the first place. So briefly, some of these applications are being used, and we are seeing a lot of other applications which are being offered, which we will implement gradually.
Thank you, Abhishek. I think definitely people would reach out to you to offer a solution from this forum. Atif sir, you actually mentioned how you're using data science IoT in your previous message. So I would just want to get a quick, any example that you want to share to the audience, which has proved very effective.
Yeah, I would say we are still taking baby steps. We are kind of building the foundation now, collecting all the data. And currently, because we are looking at a really large scale, so our methods are evolving continuously. Right now, the data is coming from buildings that have been certified or in the process of certification, which have been audited. But gradually, we think we would be able to switch over to IoT and gather data for monitoring those buildings. So monitoring not just the consumption, but also the leakages, because as you might know, there's a whole lot of leakage that happens on water supply, on electricity as well. And we might be losing like a quarter of our energy and water just through leakages. If we can overcome those leakages through proper monitoring using IoT, that would be a huge win. Then secondly, it's for optimization of buildings, so proper controls. One example is if the weather outside is good, maybe the windows can open by themselves and allow the natural wind to come in and shut off the air conditioning at the same time. And thirdly, it is to collect all this data to inform new buildings that might be coming up and kind of give an optimum mix of measures, design features that would be suitable for that building type in that location. Rather than have a global template, have a very local and customized template for people to build upon.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. I know we're almost out of time. So I know Som is looking for such IoT-based solution. So on behalf of Som, I'm actually sharing audience. Som is doing an excellent work in his, I call it as one of the best circular economy projects in the world. And so you all can be part of Som's work as well. Reach out to him. He's on this one. If you want to reach out to him for helping him in building an IoT tech stack or something, I think is the excellent use of your technical skills. So thank you so much, all of you, for your time. I mean, this was amazing. So much of learning. I personally learned a lot of things. On behalf of Sus Mafia as well, I would like to engage with you all, with the other entrepreneurs who are part of Sus Mafia as well, and provide to you and various other people who are seeking for sustainability solution. Thank you so much, and looking forward for more action and more growth in this field, so that we match the economic growth with the environment, social, and the governance goals of the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Ganesh.
Thank you to the excellent Sustainability Future panel. I really enjoyed the discussion. In fact, as you were speaking, I was picking up tips on how to save energy at home and at my office. So big word of thanks to Ganesh Shankar, CEO and founder FluxGen and co-founder of Sustainability Mafia, susmafia.org, for putting together the panel and moderating it so well. We really enjoyed the flow of the discussion. A big thank you to the panelists, Dr. Sunita Purushottam, Head of Sustainability, Mahindra Lifesavers Developers, Mr. Autif Syed, Country Lead, Green Building Program, IFC, Mr. Abhishek Bansal, Chief Sustainability Officer of the Arvind Group, Mr. Som Narayan, Partner and Co-founder, Cotton Masters, Mr. Ashwin Kak, Associate Director, Sustainability and Agriculture, AB InBev India. Thank you all so much. To the audience now. So in case anyone has missed any part of this session, if you were not there at the beginning, the entire recording of the session would be available on our platform. Please visit our website and we will show you the link to all these recordings, not just today, but over the last 6 years. Thank you. Have a great day to the panelists. People in the audience, please continue. The next track that is coming up is Agri-Tech. That would be moderated by Mr. Ashok Meda, co-chair and a core member of the IoT Forum. So thank you to the panel. Have a great day.